Oh, you're still single? Pathetic for someone your age. I encountered my ex-husband in a fancy Chinese restaurant. His words were as sarcastic as ever, stirring irritation in me. Amidst our conversation, my sister, whom he had eloped with, appeared. Facing my ex-husband's declaration of their upcoming marriage, I couldn't help but mock him. What? You didn't tell her? I was about to drop a bombshell on my jubilant ex-husband. My name is Marie. I'm a 39-year-old housewife. I married Ken, who works in the transport industry, about 2 years ago. We met at the company where I was an office clerk. His bright and energetic demeanor left a good impression on me, and I made the first move. His friendly nature and masculine charm were what drew me to him. It was love at first sight. He reciprocated my feelings, and we married within 6 months. During our courtship, I thought he was kind and personable, but after marriage, he changed completely. It became routine for him to yell at me. At times, his behavior was dehumanizing. I never imagined married life would be this painful and difficult. Every day was gloomy, and I even started to fear my husband. Ken was a short-distance delivery driver, not a long-haul trucker. If he had been on long trips, I might have had some respite, but his job involved delivering numerous packages to various locations daily. He'd usually be home by evening. Early in our marriage, I expressed a desire to work. I want to contribute to our finances. Working together would mean more savings, and it'll help if we have children. At that moment, he slammed his drink down on the table and began berating me. Are you saying my income isn't enough? I never meant that. His drunken rage was terrifying. As he looked ready to throw the glass at me, I hastily tried to appease him. No, that's not it. I just don't want to be a burden to you. So you think you're better than me, huh? Who do you think provides this lifestyle? Your earnings wouldn't even matter, so don't act all high and mighty. It became clear after marriage that he was paranoid and emotionally unstable, something I hadn't seen while we were dating. The thought of spending my life with him filled me with immense anxiety. Then, an event stoked these fears even more. I'm so happy Marie married my son. I worried he'd never bring home a girlfriend, let alone get married. This happened at a Christmas gathering at my parents-in-law's house. My parents-in-law were really kind people, and they also cared for me very much. When we got married, they were as happy as if we had given birth to our own child. They were genuinely kind people, especially my mother-in-law Jessica and father-in-law Daniel. They cared for me dearly. The only solace in my stifling marriage was meals with my in-laws. But even in front of them, my husband began to make a spectacle of me. It all started at that family gathering. Aren't I lucky to have such a beautiful wife? Look at mine. She's gotten so out of shape. A relative joked about his wife, who playfully retorted while pinching his belly, lightening the mood. Then my husband chimed in. What are you talking about? Marie's figure is so bad, she barely looks like a woman. Your wife is way more elegant and attractive. His unexpected and revealing remarks left me speechless. Though the male relatives told him to stop, everyone else was laughing as if it were a great joke. The only one who seemed to sense something was wrong was my father-in-law. Marie, go to the kitchen. Help Jessica with the dinner preparations there. Daniel said to me, visibly shaken. This gave me a chance to escape the scene, and I hurried to the kitchen with Jessica. Overwhelmed with grief, I broke into tears. Jessica consoled me like a mother. Daniel, on the other hand, scolded everyone for laughing and drinking, persuading them to apologize to me. Everyone apologized except for my drunken husband, who was defiant. A husband apologizing to his wife? That's why Dad is always mocked by Mom. Can't you maintain some dignity? This inexplicably led to a father-son argument. The gathering ended early, and from that day, the relationship between Daniel and my husband deteriorated. My visits to my husband's family home became almost non existent. From then on, my life was a living hell. Deprived of my only joy, I lost all hope and grew weaker day by day. I couldn't find the energy to do household chores, and my husband would scream at me whenever he remembered that day. "You must have said something to Dad and them. You made me a laughingstock in front of everyone. How are you going to make this right?" His threatening demeanor left me in constant fear. I was emotionally exhausted. Living on the 10th floor of a condominium, I sometimes wondered if jumping off would end my misery. When one is mentally drained, rational thinking becomes impossible, and that was exactly my state. I wished he would just kill me. That's when I thought about that. It was then that my sister visited. "You haven't been in touch lately, so I got worried, Marie. You look terrible," said my sister Michelle, who is 3 years older than me and works nights. A popular figure in her job, Michelle appears much younger than her age and was a top earner at her previous workplace. It was unusual for her to visit unannounced, so I asked her why. She was in the area to check on her new shop's construction and decided to stop by on her way back. "Trouble with your husband?" Michelle and I have always been close. She was overjoyed at my wedding, crying with happiness. "I just want to disappear." "What happened?" Seeing my sister, tears welled up in my eyes as I shared my suffering. The daily harassment from my husband, living in a tortuous prison, thinking about ending it all. Hearing all this, Michelle was furious and wanted to confront my husband immediately. But the thought of what would happen to me if she did was terrifying. I begged her through tears not to do it. Seeing my state, Michelle calmed down and started pondering a solution. After a moment of silence, an idea seemed to strike her. She whispered something in my ear with a bright expression. Shocked, I asked her if she was serious. "Can you really do that?" "Who do you think I am?" She was brimming with confidence. Though it seemed like something Michelle could do, the risk, if it were discovered, made me anxious. "Don't you want to break free from here?" Seeing my hesitation, Michelle became serious, ultimately leaving the decision up to me. Hearing her words, I made up my mind and agreed to her plan. I decided to go along with my sister's plan. From that day, she started visiting daily. "People who harass others usually want to look good in public. If I'm here, he can't do anything strange to you." And so, for several months, until her shop was ready, my sister stopped by every day. At first, my husband seemed uneasy, but he gradually warmed up to her as they drank together daily. My sister would get him drunk and stay until he fell asleep. "Since you're always here for a fun drink, why not stay over once in a while?" my now fond husband suggested. When she tried to leave, he'd act childishly, refusing to let her go, a side of him I'd never seen. But she always declined. "I'll come again tomorrow," she'd say with a graceful face. For my husband, these moments with my sister were like a dream. He was completely charmed by her, paying no attention to me anymore. Then, when my sister's shop was about to reopen, a crisis occurred. "I'm divorcing you," my husband suddenly declared. Naturally, I was shocked and demanded an explanation. "Why divorce all of a sudden?" "I've found someone I care about more than you. I'll be happy with her. This is the end for us. Leave the house." His selfish reasons were unacceptable to me, and I refused to agree to the divorce. But he was prepared for that, coldly stating he'd involve a lawyer. Later, during a discussion with a lawyer present, he continued his unbelievable tirade. "Is money all you want? How much do you need? Just name your price and let's end this." He was clear about his lack of love for me, willing to pay to get rid of our marriage, his words dripping with annoyance. The lawyer, seemingly uncomfortable, showed me documents about standard settlements, looking at me with concern. "So you have no love left for me. I guess your heart is with—" realizing who he had in mind. I hung my head. Understanding resistance was futile, and accepting the divorce terms. Fine, I'll ask for $30,000. It was a sum usually not granted without infidelity. But he didn't hesitate, likely thinking he could easily earn it back. He rejoiced at the thought of an uncomplicated divorce, unaware of the true situation. I watched him with a meaningful, cunning smile. The divorce proceedings moved forward without him ever realizing my true feelings. However, my agreement to the divorce was strongly opposed by his parents. When I went to inform them, they scolded him and defended me.
What are you thinking?
That's right. Marie has been so devoted to our family, and now you want a divorce? To leave for someone you like is utterly childish. Jessica tearfully tried to convince him, while Daniel, red-faced and agitated, reprimanded him. But to him, their words seemed only a nuisance. He picked his ear and frowned in annoyance.
What does it matter if Marie agrees to it?
That's only because you pushed her into it with a lawyer. It was clear they didn't want the divorce. They truly cared for me like their own child, and the thought of us parting saddened them. Their pleas echoed my guilt for betraying them. I loved them too, and wished I could have remained their daughter. If my husband hadn't turned out this way, perhaps I could have had a happy life with them. Regret was all I felt, and tears involuntarily spilled from my eyes.
Really, they're so annoying. I'm done with you, Marie. I'm going to marry someone important and be happy. No more complaints.
My husband, infuriated by my parents-in-law's words, began to shout and defy them. Of course, they would never approve of such a marriage, and my husband was told off on the spot. Thus, he left his parents' home and eloped with the woman he loved, finalizing our divorce. Half a year later, I was at a fancy Chinese restaurant, enjoying a meal with my parents when it happened.
Isn't that Marie?
It was my ex-husband who called out to me. As I stepped out to make a phone call,
It's been a while. You're still alive, huh?
his usual condescending tone distorted my face involuntarily. I must have been glaring at him with a furrowed brow.
What's with that face? If you have something to say, say it.
Even in public, he looked down on me with a cold stare, though he didn't yell. I turned my face away, holding back my anger.
You can't even stand up for yourself. But you've gotten bolder, huh? Have you found a boyfriend or two since then?
My provocative attitude seemed funny to him, and he laughed mockingly. This insensitivity was something I came to know only after marrying him. I hated myself for not realizing it sooner. It doesn't matter to you anymore. Even though I didn't answer, he presumptuously decided I had no lover, taunting me continuously. He let out a mocking laugh as he continued to provoke me.
Oh, still single. Pitiful for someone your age.
He leaned in, looking triumphant, about to mock me further when, "Oh, Ken and Marie, I didn't expect to find you here." My sister entered the restaurant and called out to us.
Michelle, perfect timing. I was just about to tell Marie.
My ex-husband's face lit up, vulgarly, as he put his arm around my sister. I watched calmly, giving him a chilly look.
I was going to tell you that Michelle and I are getting married.
He pulled my sister closer, beaming proudly. I had easily guessed the reason for my divorce was his actions towards my sister. Instead of feeling hurt, I looked at them emotionlessly.
Sorry, I'm the one getting happy here. But hey, you're not bad looking. Maybe you'll find someone. I'm off to build a happy home with my girlfriend.
He was about to continue when, "Sorry, Ken, I can't marry you." My sister gently brushed off his hand and spoke cheerfully. Confused, he stared at her, not understanding the situation. "Actually, I never had any feelings for you."
Wait, what do you mean?
He couldn't grasp what was happening. I mockingly echoed in feigned surprise. "Oh, you didn't know?"
What do you mean, didn't know?
Michelle seducing you was all a scheme between Michelle and me, all to get you to divorce me. I walked beside my sister and we exchanged smiles, looking at each other. My ex husband looked on, unable to comprehend, clearly confused.
Play acting? Huh?
Thanks to Michelle's seduction, I got a good amount of compensation from you and a divorce. I am truly grateful. During the divorce, I obviously got half of our assets, which meant $30,000 plus $25,000 of our savings came to me. Refusing the divorce that day was all part of the act, a scheme orchestrated by Michelle to get money from him. Michelle told me to make sure I got all the money I could from you. I desperately wanted the divorce, but agreeing too quickly might have aroused suspicion, so I played along.
There's no way Michelle would say such a thing.
My ex-husband couldn't accept the truth and kept denying my words. I tilted my head, feigning confusion.
Michelle is going to marry me. She wouldn't say such terrible things.
To take such business talk seriously, I was merely entertaining a client as part of my job. Michelle, looking troubled, spoke with her eyebrows furrowed. Putting her hand on her cheek, she said with a sigh, I was only entertaining you as a client. I never had any feelings for you. Sorry for getting your hopes up.
You mean you've been deceiving me all this time? For half a year?
You were a good customer. You were the top spender in my shop. So prideful, always striving to match what others spent. It was quite adorable. Michelle spoke with a mocking laugh. My ex-husband, completely fooled by her act, shouted in the restaurant.
So everything about wanting to be with me and asking me to leave Marie was all a lie?
Of course. Who would want to be with a man who harasses others?
What?
Michelle's sharp words angered him further, and he became visibly agitated. I cautiously watched their exchange, touching my mobile phone discreetly. It was hard to make you fall for me, but your simplicity helped. I couldn't leave my husband, you know. In reality, Michelle was already married, her husband working as a bodyguard. She had persuaded my ex-husband to leave me, claiming she was getting a divorce too. For my ex-husband, who had little experience with romance, her pursuit was a delight. A sense of superiority in stealing her from someone else.
So all that about taking time with the divorce was...
Of course, a lie. My husband and I are perfectly happy. At that moment, a man appeared from behind, approaching with a smile.
Nice to meet you. My wife has told me a lot about you. Incredible.
This is my husband, Steve. I invited you here today to introduce you. Michelle, arm in arm with her husband, Steve, smiled brightly, showing off their happiness to my ex-husband. He turned pale, his face a mix of anger and sadness. It's a shame you wasted half a year. Disowned by your family, and now with nowhere to go? Really pitiful. As I whispered these words, my ex-husband, overwhelmed, reached out to grab my collar in frustration. But Steve skillfully stopped him, treating him like a child.
What do you know about my feelings? This year I spent pursuing her. Do you understand that?
I don't want to understand. You dare to talk high and mighty after playing with people's lives? Do you know how much pain you caused me? I raised my voice, letting my tears and pent-up emotions flow, confronting him with all my suppressed feelings. Being ridiculed in front of relatives, your attitude towards Jessica and the others. I will never forgive all the things you did during our marriage. You deserve to see hell. Turning around, I called out for someone to come. Then my ex-husband's parents, my parents, and even his relatives appeared from the room behind. Let's show them your true self and how pitiful you really are. While he looked puzzled, I played the voice recorder I got from my sister, playing his cringeworthy sweet talk to her. Are you really going to leave Marie?
Of course. I don't need someone who's only good for housework. I prefer someone with an adult and attractive figure like you, Michelle.
His voice dripping with smugness as he hit on my sister was cringe-inducing. Despite the discomfort, I continued playing the recording. exposing my ex-husband in front of our relatives. But you liked Marie, didn't you?
No way. A woman who's only good as a housemaid? I never really liked her. I married her just to boost my own status. No real feelings involved.
The relatives showed their disgust at my husband's words. He began to rage, demanding to stop the recording. But Steve, strong and determined, held him back, even as he shouted in protest.
She was always obedient to me, just a little threat, and she'd comply, more of a servant than a wife. I have no attachment or regrets about her.
Hearing this evidence of his harassment, my in-laws distorted their faces in anger, and everyone unanimously condemned him. He was completely alienated, criticized by everyone.
You're a disgrace to our family. How could you say such things about your own wife?
It's shameful for a man to act like this. I'm embarrassed he's part of our family. While everyone looked at him with disdain, I spoke to him in a cold tone. You have no one on your side anymore. Understand this and never come near our family again. I never want to see your face again. I triumphantly stopped the voice recorder and asked Steve to escort my ex-husband out. He struggled to respond, but it was futile, and he was thrown out of the restaurant. Even after the doors were locked, he caused a scene outside until the police were called and took him away. My sister and I high-fived, sharing joy in our successful revenge. We ordered food for a celebratory party, and everyone comforted me for my struggles and suffering. It was good to book the whole restaurant. I'm glad everyone could enjoy themselves without worry, my sister remarked, having arranged the venue. I expressed my gratitude to my sister for everything, enjoying a meal together for the first time in a while. This marked my successful revenge on my ex-husband. After that, he reportedly stalked my sister, resulting in police involvement and a painful lesson from Steve. He never dared to show up again after being intimidated by Steve. 13 years have passed since then, and I now handle the accounting for my sister's shop. I still keep in touch with my in-laws, occasionally going out for meals with them. I am forever grateful to my sister for saving me from my hell. As I work hard alongside her, I vowed to repay this immense debt of gratitude someday.
Ma'am, are you really married? Excuse me? What do you mean? I had hired a private investigator for a certain investigation. From the report of that investigator, I heard an unexpected fact that left me unable to hide my shock. If my husband has been exploiting my frequent night shifts to have a sweet affair, I will never forgive him. My name is Rachel. I am a nurse at a general hospital and a working wife who was about to celebrate her first Christmas since getting married. My husband Daniel, whom I married half a year ago, is a very gentle man who is 5 years older than me. We met at a social gathering, and we hit it off because we had the same last name. We got married as we entered our 4th year of dating. Daniel's parents had already passed away, and he said he had no relatives, so we ended with a photo wedding instead of having a wedding ceremony. Daniel is an area manager of a retail store. He basically works at a branch, but he also goes on business trips to the head office and visits various stores. I don't have any children yet, and I thought I should earn money when I can, so I mainly take night shifts. Thanks to that, I can relax on my days off after night shift, and I think I have more days off than other jobs because a night shift counts as 2 days of work. Daniel's job did not have fixed days off, so he often adjusted to match my days off. We enjoyed our newlywed life by going on many trips and dates. One day when I came home from a night shift, Daniel, who should have already gone to work, was at home. "I'm home." "Huh? Daniel? You're not off today, are you?" When I asked with curiosity, Daniel opened his mouth with great difficulty and said, well, you see, I have a sudden business trip from tomorrow, and it might be a bit long, so they suddenly gave me the day off today." "I see. How long will you be gone?" About a week, I think. It might be longer, but I won't know until I get there. All right, work hard. I was saddened by the sudden and lengthy business trip. I had a rare consecutive holiday the day after tomorrow, and I was looking forward to spending a slow evening with Daniel. But if it's for work, I had no choice but to switch gears, and I decided to drive Daniel to the airport. It takes about 2 hours by car to the airport, and it takes about 2 hours by plane to the head office in New York. After seeing off Daniel at the airport, I strolled around the airport, which I rarely visit, had lunch at a famous nearby cafe, and returned home. Exhausted, I sprawled out on the sofa, where I spotted an unfamiliar envelope tucked under the TV stand. It must have been something that Daniel, who was supposed to be on a business trip to the head office, had left behind. Feeling a little guilty, I checked inside. Inside was an album filled with pictures of Daniel, an unknown woman, and a little girl, maybe around 5 years old, in front of a kindergarten classroom, dressed in a school uniform. What on earth is this? My mind went blank. Could it be an affair? And with a single mother? Unforgivable. Infidelity. The word floated into my mind, and before I knew it, I found myself calling Daniel's office. I mentioned that I knew Daniel, made up a reason, and asked if he was on his trip. To my shock, they told me that Daniel was on bereavement leave. What's more, I was informed that there were hardly any business trips from their branch to the head office. What was going on? Daniel had told me he was away on business, but he was on bereavement leave? I hadn't heard anything about it. He was lying to get time off work, just to meet with the woman and child in these photos. That was the only conclusion I could come to. I started looking for a detective agency. I decided on one, planning to visit the next day. But all the while, I couldn't shake the realization that in the 4 years we'd been dating, Daniel had been lying to me about these non-existent business trips. A profound emptiness washed over me. Perhaps I was exhausted, because at some point, I fell asleep. When I woke up, it was already 6 a.m. the next day. I had an appointment at the detective agency at 10 a.m., so I got ready, carefully placing the envelope I'd found yesterday in a larger bag so it wouldn't fold. At the agreed-upon time, I walked through the gates of a detective agency for the first time in my life. The words I had prepared to say flew out of my head the moment I opened the door to the office. The detective waiting for me was a young man who looked to be in his mid-20s and was dressed like a college student. Reading my surprise, he asked with a casual smile, "You think I'm an immature-looking detective, don't you?" and managed to lighten the mood. "Oh no, I'm sorry, it's just... This is my first time at a place like this. I'm a bit nervous." I responded on impulse, but he kindly urged me to sit on the sofa. After a small talk with the detective, I took out the album that had led me to suspect Daniel of infidelity. True to form, the detective started collecting necessary evidence, deftly making copies. He picked up a copy of the picture of the three in front of the school and told me, "This is likely to be a significant clue." The name of the school was clearly visible in the photo. Immediately, the detective searched for the preschool online and made a call. He made the call in a separate room, so I had no idea how he extracted the information, but apparently, the little girl in the photo was a student at that preschool. And unsurprisingly, that child was currently on a leave of absence from the school. The school was located in New York, so I was told it would be an expensive job, but I agreed. Actually, I had been studying and investing in stocks and Forex since adulthood. After becoming a working adult, I started investing with my monthly salary, and I've had some decent returns, so I decided to use that money for the investigation. We'd need to fly to New York, and it was unclear how many days it would take to get evidence, but the biggest humiliation for me was being lied to by my husband. I wanted to grab proof at any cost. That determination drove me. The detective seemed to assume that once Daniel returned here, the little girl would also return to preschool. The next day, I went to work as usual. Of course, I put back the envelope and its contents exactly where they were. Then I got a message from Daniel, who was supposed to be away for a week, saying, "Sorry, my business trip is going to be extended by 3 more days. I'll be back on Sunday." As arranged, I contacted the detective the day Daniel returned home. The detective understood and seemed pumped to start the investigation. The next day, he flew to New York and began his preliminary investigation. That evening, I received a call from the detective revealing an unbelievable fact. During the preliminary investigation, an unexpected situation came to light. What do you mean? I was totally confused. I'll be back tomorrow. Can we meet soon? Yes, anytime. Responding like that, I promptly headed to the detective's office after finishing my night shift the next day. So, was he cheating after all? To my question, the detective seemed to struggle to give an answer. No, I think this situation might be even more serious, the detective said, with a grave look on his face, which made me swallow my words. Firstly, it's likely true that your husband has taken a leave of absence for bereavement from his company. However, Mrs., are you sure you're really married to Daniel? What? What are you implying? We officially registered our marriage 6 months ago. In fact, I followed Daniel and your daughter back from her kindergarten in New York and found their home. According to the locals, Daniel has been living alone here for the past 4 years, only returning to New York a few times a year. I heard he stayed for about a week for his father-in-law's funeral in New York. No way. I was at a loss for words. Since you and Daniel originally had the same last name, it's hard to say anything at this stage, but I would suggest you check at the city hall. The detective advised. After expressing my thanks, I made my way straight to the city hall. At the city hall, I obtained a copy of the residency certificate for my entire household. What was written on it, however, was only my name. No way! There must be some mistake. I got married 6 months ago. I appealed loudly to the female City Hall staff member who was helping me in my confusion. The staff member, seeming distressed, said, "Even if you say so, we couldn't find any record of your marriage." But I insisted, pleading with her. "Please, check it again. My husband's name is Daniel. Please." To my near tears, the staff member repeatedly apologized with genuine remorse. In the midst of my confusion, I recalled the day I had submitted our marriage registration. Despite it being a workday for me, Daniel insisted that it had to be done on that auspicious day, and I had to go alone to the city hall to submit our marriage registration. I never would have imagined that our marriage registration was not submitted. After letting my tears flow, my emotions gradually settled down. I apologized and bowed my head, then left the city hall. All I could think about on my way home from my night shift was how tiring everything had been lately. I fell asleep on the sofa, pondering what to do next. When I woke up, Daniel was in the middle of preparing dinner. Seeing him like this reminded me of the woman and the girl in the photo. I was furious about being deceived, but I realized that if I lost my cool now, I wouldn't be able to take any action. So I was able to suppress my emotions. From that day on, I put on a smile in front of Daniel. About a week after going to the city hall, I had been considering whether I could find out anything about his real wife from Daniel's phone or his surroundings. Daniel tends to be quite forgetful, and it seemed that he accidentally left his house without his smartphone that day. I happened to be off, so I considered delivering it to him. But first, I decided to check his phone. Normally, it's not cool to snoop on someone else's phone, but I couldn't afford such decorum at the time. Considering the state of my mental health, I felt I had no choice. Daniel occasionally unlocks his phone while voicing the passcode, so unlocking it was easy. From there, I found the contact of a woman with a girl's picture he always talked about as an icon. I immediately called this woman. Around the third ring, a calm and elegant woman's voice answered. Hello? Who is this? When I asked, Are you Mrs. Daniel Smith? The woman's tone turned puzzled. Yes, I am. But who are you? I'm someone Daniel met at his outstation. It's hard for me to say this, but we are living together now. So there really is a woman at his outstation. I see. I was planning to visit my husband who lives there during the end of the year holidays. Can we talk then? I didn't expect this turn of events. I gladly accepted such a generous offer. Around that time, Daniel said, Sorry, but there's a reunion in my hometown this New Year's, so I'm going to go back home. I had been waiting for these words from Daniel. Of course, I immediately agreed. According to what his wife told me, Daniel's hometown is the next town over. I heard both his parents had passed away, and he had no relatives. But it turns out, both parents are alive and well, and still living in the next town. There's only 1 month left until the end of the year. I decided to find a lawyer who specializes in relationships and planned to thoroughly punish Daniel. Until the day of the showdown, I acted as usual with Daniel, but emotionally, it was unbearable. And finally, 1 month later, the day of the showdown arrived. I told Daniel I had a night shift starting the night of the 30th and left the house with a smile, saying, Take care, and Happy New Year! Of course, I explained the situation at work, and got a vacation from December 30th to January 2nd. I stayed at a business hotel on the 30th, and on the morning of the 31st, I went to the meeting place with Daniel's wife, and saw an elegant woman just like in the photos. Her name is Mary, and she married Daniel 6 years ago, and they have a 5-year-old daughter. After briefly discussing each other, Mary and I began executing the plan. Mary came all the way from New York by plane, with her parents and her daughter. Since this isn't a story to tell a young child, she left her daughter with her mother, in the hotel room. Together with Mary's father, we were heading to Daniel's family home. It seemed that Mary had spoken to Daniel's parents beforehand, so I was surprised when they bowed deeply to me as soon as they saw me. Then, on the evening of the 31st, as planned, Daniel opened the door to his parents' living room. I'm home! Welcome back! The woman who welcomed Daniel with a smile was not Daniel's parents, nor Mary, but me. Seeing me, Daniel went pale. Why are you here? I faced the surprised Daniel and replied with a calm smile. What's this? Weren't you married to me? No. This is... Daniel couldn't move, pale as a ghost. There stood Mary, Mary's father, and Daniel's parents, all present. They all glared at Daniel with stern faces. Mary spoke up quietly. What's the meaning of this, Daniel? We just had a baby and needed help from our parents. So I asked you to work away from home. But behind our backs, you've been having an affair and leading a double life. Mary spoke so matter-of-factly that for a moment, I felt a chill run down my spine. I'm just glad we're on the same side now. I began to berate him as well. Daniel, every time you said you were going on a business trip, it seems you were meeting with your family. You were married. Why did you approach me? Did you think you could deceive me? This is marriage fraud. You're scum. And when I asked your company about your business trips, they said you hardly ever go on them. What are you thinking with such a beautiful wife and adorable daughter at home? I was such a fool to believe your lies. Confronted by both of us, Daniel sighed, then burst into laughter. I wonder how I was found out. Living a double life was fun, especially with Rachel working well. It was easy to deceive you because we have the same last name, and you mostly work nights, so I could do whatever I wanted. Upon hearing those words, Daniel's mother, who had no recollection of raising such a son, gave him a punch in the face. I looked up at Daniel and said, "That's right. Besides me, you had 3 other lovers, didn't you?" As I thrust the incriminating photos at him. Startled, Daniel sputtered, "What is this? Are you stalking me? I'll sue you." These are all the pieces of evidence gathered by a private investigator I hired because I thought you were having an affair. We're going to make you pay damages to both Mary and me. As I said this with a firm tone, Daniel suddenly collapsed to the floor, begging for mercy. "I'm sorry. Just spare me the damages. I'll continue my relationship with both of you. Just spare me the damages," he cried out. I was speechless with disbelief, but it seemed that he was broke from spending too much on his other lovers. I couldn't care less. I left Daniel's childhood home with the words, "I don't even want to speak to you anymore. Let's deal with the rest through our lawyers." After that, I went through my lawyer to file a claim for compensation on the grounds of bigamy. I was grateful to my lawyer when the money was successfully recovered. I felt guilty towards Mary and tried to give her some of the compensation, but she refused. In fact, she was grateful for all the evidence I provided, and we became friends. According to Mary, she collected compensation from Daniel's other girlfriend and broke up with him. Of course, she made sure to get her fair share of alimony and child support. Apparently, one of his mistresses was a colleague of his, and Daniel was demoted at work and sent to a subsidiary company. At the new company, he's apparently being bossed around by a younger employee and cries every day. However, he can't quit his job because he needs the money to pay off the compensation. On the other hand, I moved out of the house I had been living in and rented a place that's just right for living alone, and I'm leading a carefree life. I now visit New York a few times a year and continue to be friends with Mary and her daughter.
I'm divorcing you. I want to live with mom and dad. Get out, you leeching homemaker.
A heated argument had crossed a line with the husband's words. I handed him the prepared divorce papers, making him sign the documents the lawyer had prepared. My husband and in-laws were thrilled about the divorce, but they didn't know yet. They didn't know that an unimaginable hell was awaiting them. My name is Emily, and I'm 30 years old. I'm a homemaker. I have been married to Mason for 5 years, and our only daughter, Lily, is almost 4. On the surface, we seem like a happy family, but there was one problem I couldn't share with anyone. We lived with my husband's parents, and it had become a massive burden for me. It all started right after we got married. Mason was supposed to move to my apartment after our wedding, but suddenly he proposed something unexpected.
Hey, Emily, about after we get married?
The registration is next month and it's coming soon. What's going on?
Well, I've been thinking about this. How about we live with my parents after we get married?
What?
Live together?
I was speechless at the sudden proposition. Seeing my reaction, my husband hastily added,
Oh, I don't mean forever. We'll want our home someday and we'll need a car when we have children. So I want to save money for that time.
I understand wanting to save money, but do we have to live together?
My parents said we could live there for free. They're getting old and they said it would be comforting to have us around.
I appreciate their kindness, but
I'm serious about saving money for our future, Emily. So I want to save on rent until we have kids. Please, I beg you.
My husband repeatedly pleaded, leaving me in a difficult position. It was hard to refuse when we cited saving for our future as the reason for living together. And this arrangement was only to last until we had children. My husband's salary isn't all that high. That's why I can understand my husband's argument that we should live with my parents and save on living expenses by saving money. Eventually, I gave in, and reluctantly we decided to live with my in-laws. For the first few months, living together wasn't a problem. We both saved part of our income in a joint account and everything was going smoothly. Then, my pregnancy was confirmed. When I reported it to my husband, the news immediately reached my in-laws as well. That's probably when my nightmare began. After becoming pregnant with his child, my mother-in-law started to become more and more harsh. Upon getting pregnant, I switched to working from home, and my mother-in-law said to me in a stern tone, "Emily, what are you doing at home while my son is out working?" I'm working too? Huh? What kind of work? You're just playing around on the computer. No, this is my job. I switched to something I can do at home because of my morning sickness. But no matter how I explained, mother-in-law just shook her head and sighed. My goodness, what an awful daughter-in-law. You're just trying to deceive us, aren't you? Morning sickness is nothing. Lying to get out of work is despicable. Wait a minute. I really just switched to working from home. Quiet. Don't talk back to me. You're just a daughter-in-law. If you're just going to play on the computer, at least take care of the house. And so, my days of being forced to do housework without acknowledgement of my work from home continued. Morning sickness can vary day to day. Some days, life goes on as normal, but others, it's so agonizing I can't even get up. No matter how much I tried to explain, mother-in-law wouldn't budge. In fact, every time I opened my mouth, she would scream, "It's a lie. It's an excuse," and wouldn't believe a word I said. And to think mother-in-law herself went through the pain of childbirth with her son Mason. As for my father-in-law, he's always been a man of few words. He's quiet, but he never intervenes between mother-in-law and me and is firmly on mother-in-law's side. All the while, I'm being lectured by mother-in-law, he has this creepy grin on his face. I've sometimes thought it would be better to go to the office instead, but the trauma of feeling sick while outside made it impossible for my body to endure commuting during pregnancy. However, if I kept being harassed by my in-laws every day, the stress would build up. I decided to talk to my husband about it. "Mason, I hate to bring this up all of a sudden, but can we stop living with your parents?"
What?
My husband looked at me bewildered and asked,
What's wrong all of a sudden?
"I don't want to say this, but living with your parents, it's reached its limit for me."
What do you mean limit? Did something happen?
"Well, every day when you're not around, I've been harassed."
Harassed?
I told my husband everything from mother-in-law's snide remarks to my father-in-law's cold attitude. Tears welled up as I spoke, and though I was choked up, I firmly conveyed how unbearable my life had become. Mason will surely respect my feelings above all. Our monthly savings might decrease a bit, but he will definitely understand. But what came out of my husband's mouth were words I could never have imagined.
Hey, isn't this Emily's fault?
What?
No, I mean, if mom and dad are behaving like that, it must be for a serious reason. You get scolded like that because you don't do what mom says, right?
I never thought I would be blamed, and I was bewildered. Just wait a minute. I told you, Mason, didn't I? I have switched to working from home. But that doesn't mean I'm not working at all. It's impossible to take on all the housework during work hours.
Do you want to say that mom and dad are wrong? We're living here for free, just listen a little.
Dad and Mom.
Oh, anyway, this is Emily's fault. Don't trouble my precious parents any further.
My husband ended the conversation unilaterally and left the room. Dad and Mom, how old are you? I explained everything. So why do you only defend your parents and not me? If I knew it would come to this, I would never have agreed to live together in the first place. But I don't have the courage to leave this house now. I'm about to give birth. If I become alone now, I can see that life will be hard. That thought held me back, and I couldn't bring myself to divorce. Time passed, and I safely gave birth to my daughter. I think I endured well, all things considered, against the harassment of my in-laws and my husband's incomprehension. I wanted to divorce as soon as possible, but I couldn't because my husband and in-laws loved our daughter so much, and I couldn't bear to take her family away from her. Spending the day with my in-laws was painful, so I wanted to return to work right after parental leave, but the company's policy changed, and I had to settle for working from home. Today, as I was preparing dinner while my mother-in-law complained, my husband came home with a big smile on his face.
I'm home. Man, I'm tired.
"Welcome back," I called out, and my husband ran to me flashing some documents. "What's this?"
You won't believe it. I bought a high-rise condo today.
"What? A high-rise condo? You bought it? You're joking, right?"
It's not a joke. My parents and I have been talking about living in a high-rise condo for a while now. Man, my dream has finally come true.
What? What are you talking about? Ignoring my confusion, my in-laws were cheering and saying well done to my husband. I was so taken aback that I hurriedly questioned my husband. Wait a minute, you're lying about the high-rise condo, right?
Why would I lie? It's great. From now on, we'll be living in a high-rise condo. We're joining the upper class.
Don't be ridiculous. I didn't hear anything about it, and we can't possibly live in a high-rise condo.
But we can't live in one, you know. I had an acquaintance push through the review for us under the condition of paying double the deposit.
What? What is this man suddenly talking about? I hadn't heard anything about living in a high-rise condo and doubling the deposit. Where would we get that kind of money? In my shock, I was at a loss for words, and my husband began to look down on me and snap at me.
Do you have a problem with me or something? After all, I humbled myself to get our application approved.
It's not that I'm complaining, but I'm shocked that you didn't consult me. Why aren't you saying anything to me? What about our plans to save for a home and car?
If I had told you, you would have just objected, right?
What?
I had planned to live with my parents after we got married from the start, and I never, ever intended to move out.
What? What do you mean? Then what about saving money?
I just made something that sounded good. All I ever wanted was to live with mom and dad. That's all.
My husband deceived me? I never knew he could have such a scheme. Anger began to bubble up inside me, and my voice grew harsher. What's that about? Don't be ridiculous. You prioritize living with your parents over our married life?
What's wrong with that? I only married you for appearances. You just mess around at home saying you're working remotely. A failure of a wife like you should just keep quiet and do as you're told.
Stop it. Enough. I can't bear it anymore. I didn't think you were like this.
That's my line. I want a divorce, you homemaker parasite.
Calling me a parasite? That's harsh.
But it's the truth, isn't it? I don't need a failure like you. I'll live in a high-rise apartment with mom and dad, and you're just in the way. I'll give you custody, but leave right away.
Don't you find your own daughter cute?
I'll tell you now, she's not cute because she looks like you. I was just pretending to dote on her. What mom and dad really wanted was a boy, not a girl.
Being insulted about my daughter too? The fuse inside me finally blew. I understand. If you say so, I will leave. But I need a week because of Lily.
All right, you will leave without fail after a week, right?
Thus, my preparations for revenge began. The next day, I headed to a law firm to have a pledge prepared that stated no contact after divorce. The deadline of a week was short, but I did everything possible towards the divorce. A week later, I handed over the prepared divorce papers and had him sign the documents the lawyer created. As I left with my daughter clutching our belongings, my husband and in-laws sneered and said,
"You're finally leaving? We're moving to a high-rise apartment soon, and it's going to be amazing. We can sell this house and use it for the new home's mortgage. 2 birds with 1 stone, right, Mom?"
Absolutely. Living with just Mason and Dad, I'm so happy. As my daughter and I left my in-laws' home, I silently smiled to myself in my heart. They should enjoy themselves while they can. They'll have to face reality soon enough, right? A few months later, as expected, a call came from my husband.
Emily, please help me.
What happened?
Stop the weird jokes. Please come back right now. If things continue like this, we'll be kicked out of the high-rise apartment.
I thought it might be something like that.
What?
Yes, I knew it. I knew that my husband and his family would end up like this. You couldn't pay the loan, could you?
How did you know that?
Come on, it was obvious. Your salary isn't that high. At first, you managed to pay it off with the money from selling your family home, but now you can't. And you panicked and called me. That's it, right?
If you know, then help us. Our joint account has less money than I thought. There should have been several $100,000 in there.
Of course. When we divorced, I withdrew exactly half the money.
What?
My husband seemed unaware, but during that 1 week when I was preparing for the divorce, I had withdrawn half the money from our joint account and transferred it to my own account. It seems he was relying on that money. Without confirming, he now faced the reality.
Oh, wait. Taking it out on your own is unfair, isn't it?
Unfair? How so? That money was something we both saved a fixed amount into after we got married. What's wrong with me taking half as property division? It's a valid reason. Besides, you've always treated me like a parasite since I worked from home, right?
Don't joke around. My parents' savings are almost nothing, and we didn't get much for selling the family home. I was planning to use the money from our joint account for the loan payment. Give it back. That money is mine.
Don't joke around. Those are my words. I yelled back at my husband over the phone in a low voice. This is what happens when you sign contracts for things you can't afford. You got what you deserved.
What?
Just so you know, since you signed that affidavit, you owe me compensation if you involve me in anything. Should I claim it right now? Then my husband pleaded, tears in his eyes.
Give me a break.
Annoying, isn't it? Then live peacefully with your beloved dad and mom, the family you love so much. I finally found happiness by getting away from thrash like you. Stay away from me and my daughter forever. In a huff, I hung up the phone and deleted my husband's contact information. I hadn't given my new address, so we likely wouldn't meet again. From what I had heard, my husband and in-laws quickly fell behind on their loan payments and were soon evicted from their high-rise apartment. When they sold the new house to pay off the debts, only the debt remained. Since their family home was already sold, the three of them were now living in a cramped apartment. With only Mason's salary, they couldn't afford decent meals and seemed to be wasting away day by day. Rather, it seemed like a fitting punishment. On the other hand, I had rented a new house near my workplace and was enjoying peaceful days with my daughter. Work was going well and I had even been promoted recently. I was able to save a decent amount of money for my daughter. Lily, I'm sorry. Are you lonely, just you and mom? I asked my daughter on the way to the childcare center. Lily, I hated daddy when he was mean to mommy. I hated grandma and grandpa too. What? Lily loves mommy. As long as mommy is here, it's okay. Oh, Lily. Mommy stay with me forever. With those words, my daughter tightly grasped my hand. The bitterness and resentment that had been lingering in my heart slowly started to unravel. I will make this child happy, no matter what. I vowed to myself, squeezing my daughter's little hand in return.
It's been a decade since we tied the knot. Every year, we've made a point of visiting my in-laws' place during the Christmas holidays. As it does every year, that time is fast approaching again. The truth is, every year's Christmas is a severe strain for me. Yes, that's right. I've been having major issues with my mother-in-law, and just the thought of it weighs me down. As December draws near, I feel my spirits sink lower and lower. Every year, I rack my brains, wondering if there isn't some way out of this. My name is Lisa. I fell in love with my husband at work, and we've been married for 10 years now. I knew my mother-in-law was a bit of a busybody when we went to announce our engagement, but I never thought things would come to this. I suppose I should have been more level-headed, but at the time, I was so smitten with Paul that I didn't see the signs. I remember it as if it were yesterday. I splurged on famous chocolate as a gift, but my mother-in-law's first words were, "You shouldn't have bothered. I hate chocolate. You were so rude to give me what I don't like." Caught off guard by her words, all I could say was, "I'm sorry. One can tell a lot about you from a simple gift. I wonder if you can get along well with Paul," she said. After 3 years of marriage, I finally got pregnant and I gave birth. My mother-in-law was making a fuss about how useless I was as a wife for giving birth to a girl. Her words hit me hard as I was dealing with my first childbirth. And since then, problems with my mother-in-law only got worse. "Lisa, why didn't you give birth to a boy who will be the heir? We don't need a girl. Please give birth to a boy. If you can't do that, you're disqualified as a wife." Paul should have married a younger wife. A wife older than her husband is the worst. My mother-in-law would say things like that without considering my feelings. Of course, I talked to Paul about it, but he had no intention of defending me. "Don't take everything she says so seriously," he would say, which was just horrible. Each time, I would confide in Sarah, my sister-in-law. I've been getting along well with her since the first time I was dating Paul, and since I'm an only child, I saw her like a real sister. But my mother-in-law would call me every day asking if I had a child yet. I couldn't stand being treated as if my daughter was unwanted. And then my mother-in-law started asking me to send her money behind Paul's back because she was having a hard time. I couldn't ignore the fact that my mother-in-law was in trouble. And then, 2 years after the birth of my daughter, I was blessed with a second child. I thought that if it was a boy this time, I wouldn't be criticized, and I was on tender hooks until I found out the sex of the baby. But when I went for a checkup, the doctor told me it was a girl, and I was at a loss for words. And so began the phone onslaught from my mother-in-law again. Lisa, don't you know the sex of the baby yet? I'm sorry, I don't know yet. Modern hospitals should be able to tell. There's no way they can't. I'll let you know as soon as I find out. I don't want another girl. Sorry. I was so upset and complained to my sister-in-law. And so I gave birth without revealing the sex of the baby. When they told me, "Congratulations, it's a girl," I could only imagine my mother-in-law's demonic face, and all I could do was laugh. And my mother-in-law never once showed up at the hospital. But it was all the better for me. My mother lives 20 minutes away by car, and I had left my older child with her for the birth. My mother brought my daughter to the hospital, and we were happy to have a new family member without anyone complaining. I went back to my parents' house with my mother and my older child for a month. The month I spent relaxing with my mother at home was a time of nostalgia and relief. And when my younger child's 1-month checkup was over, I returned home, but I hadn't heard a thing from my mother-in-law. And then several months passed, and the usual Christmas holidays were upon us. I was spending every day with a heavy heart, but I couldn't avoid it, and I thought she might be in a better mood once she saw her grandchildren. So I decided to bring a famous cake this time. And on the day, Paul drove us to our usual steak restaurant. As I wondered what would be said, my heart was pounding. When we entered the reserved private room, my in-laws were already there. Despite her grumpy demeanor, the arrival of my brother-in-law and his wife soon had the meal off to a lively start. Of course, the conversation turned to my younger child, and everyone was excited, but I noticed that my mother-in-law's face was tense. I sensed something was wrong and tried to change the subject when, "You can't even give birth to a boy? You're a useless wife! You're not part of this family!" My mother-in-law suddenly started saying terrible things. And then she deliberately knocked over the tea that was in front of her. "Oh, I'm sorry. If your daughter gets a burn on her face, no one will know she's a girl." Suddenly, I was overcome with rage. My mother-in-law despised me for not giving birth to a boy. During a meal with my in-laws, the moment my mother-in-law said, "What a complete letdown of a woman!" a plate suddenly flew from where my father-in-law was sitting. What are you doing?" I was just shocked. I couldn't believe the usually mild-mannered father-in-law would throw a plate. This time, it seemed like my father-in-law turned the table on mother-in-law, which I must admit felt good. Next, my father-in-law yelled, "Enough! What right do you have to say such things? The child born has no sin. The real letdown of a woman is you." "What are you talking about? Don't joke around. A wife who can't give birth to a boy is like garbage. Such an insolent woman." "What are you, who only gave birth to boys? I wanted a girl, but you know, the child that was born has no sin. It doesn't matter if it's a girl or a boy." "There's no way it doesn't matter. Boy! Boy, boy, boy! Only boys have value. Worthless wife, worthless granddaughter, hopeless. See, you admit it, so you have nothing to say." I was holding back my tears, but at the moment when I was about to break down with a sound, "You! Enough already! Lisa has given birth to 2 children. What more do you want? They're not your children. You don't help raise them. You just demand a boy out of your own selfishness. If you want a boy that much, why don't you give birth yourself? Of course, that's impossible for an old woman like you." "Hey, stop it now. What you've been doing isn't just bullying. Even when you got an expensive chocolate, you said, 'I hate chocolate,' even though you can't afford to buy such a chocolate. When will you have a child? I don't need a girl. You're useless as a wife. Serve me. Send me money. Get a job and make money. You're getting carried away, you stupid-looking old woman. Then my brother-in-law clapped his hands. And after him, Paul also started clapping. Huh? What's going on? I didn't understand anything. I'm a man, so I didn't get involved. But I'm surprised. My real mother is a professional daughter-in-law bully. Huh? What are you talking about? I don't understand. Who's bullying daughter-in-law? You. There's no one else who would do that. I was almost abandoned by my beloved wife. Huh? Men are insensitive and useless, brother. Absolutely. In comparison, women's intuition is terrifyingly accurate. You can't cheat. Hey, what are you saying? It's obviously a joke, Sarah. Take over. Roger? What? Are you guys some kind of fraudulent group? What do you think of your real mother? What do you mean, fraudulent group? You're talking about yourself. What? Why me? You know a man named Mr. Brown, right? Huh? I don't know such a person. What are you talking about? My mother-in-law was clearly flustered. She was trying hard to change the subject with an innocent look. Then, my sister-in-law continued the conversation. What's this daughter-in-law bullying circle? Huh? I don't know. I don't know such a thing. Catch old mother-in-laws and invite them to the circle. Teach the members your invited techniques, traps, and ways to bully their daughter-in-laws. Every week you hold seminars and have a good time with the outrageous old ladies. You've been practicing the daughter-in-law bullying. You're a shitty mother-in-law. Invited by Mr. Brown, you were helping and aiding. Mr. Brown's aim was to earn money by holding seminars, but Mr. Brown was short of funds and was extorting you. You were extorting Lisa for money every month. When the money didn't come in as you expected, you vented your frustration on Mr. Brown and practiced daughter-in-law bullying. Do you think such a rotten, shitty mother-in-law will be forgiven? Mother-in-law? What does this mean? That's not true. Everything Sarah is saying is a lie. I want you to stop. Then what's this? My sister-in-law pulled out an envelope from her bag and showed the photo, and my mother-in-law's eyes were wide with surprise. This is a photo from your seminar, right? You're looking pretty friendly with Mr. Brown. And what's this? Walking arm in arm is strange, isn't it? This is unacceptable. I was confused by this unexpected event, but now I understand why you've been bullying Lisa. My wife is too strong-willed. You can't win against her. Stop joking around. I didn't know anything and let it slide, but it won't go unpunished. Misunderstanding! Misunderstanding. Enough. Let's stop. I haven't done anything. After all, you're just misunderstanding and overreacting. It's natural to have a few close friends. Then it happened. From the next private room, the voices of a few women laughing and talking could be heard. Hey, do you remember? Patricia from the 3rd District who was in the same class at elementary school? Ah, you mean that mean devil Patricia. I heard she got caught by a man and is giving him all her money. And apparently that man has started a mother-in-law harassment circle, where he invites mothers-in-law who want to harass their daughters-in-law and hold seminars or something. Oh, I know! Harassing her daughter-in-law? That's just the kind of thing that devil Patricia would do. And she's apparently investing money every month because the guy is short of money. She seems to be told that he'll return the money tenfold, but that's definitely impossible. That man has a family, and his daughter is disabled and living in a wheelchair. So she's being fooled by such a man and might destroy her own family? It's a wonder that her family hasn't collapsed so far. The face of the mother-in-law rapidly turned pale and stiffened. And then the father-in-law opened his mouth. Your life is over. What are you talking about? I've come this far without knowing what kind of woman you are. All the terrible things you've done to Lisa were simply because you are foolish as a person. Lisa, I am truly sorry. I apologize. It's not your fault. Please don't apologize. What? It sounds like I'm the one who's wrong. Just stop it! I haven't said anything wrong, and I've been complaining because my daughter-in-law isn't good enough. Don't blame me. She's such a terrible daughter-in-law after all. The terrible daughter-in-law is you. You got married, hiding everything from me, then demanded money from the kids when they became independent, and give it to other men. You are a scammer, aren't you? A scammer? The fact that I have been serving you until now is true. It's a joke to be called a scammer for that. You've been serving me? What on earth have you done for me? I've been taking my shirts and suits to the dry cleaners myself and mostly have dinner outside, only returning home to sleep. That's right, when we were little, Mom wasn't at home, and dinner was like snacks or sweet buns. We always wondered where she was going. What are you talking about? Exactly. We were told not to tell Dad anything. We thought it was strange from that time. She didn't even come to school for portfolio days or interviews. When I was taking high school entrance exams, the only person who helped me was my teacher. I was in trouble because I didn't know which school to go to. I was moved when I ate good, homemade food for the first time after getting married. Supermarket side dishes were a luxury. How could a mother like that blame Lisa? Lisa is a hardworking mother and a good wife. Don't keep quiet. Say something. You can't say anything. You thought what you've been doing wasn't found out, so you got carried away. You had no idea that the conversation would turn into this today. I wouldn't keep quiet about this. I've been talking to my father-in-law for a long time. What did you say? You have to leave this house today. We're getting divorced. Divorce? Why is this happening? It can't be helped because Lisa is my child, right? They're so close they fight. Don't mess with me. Are you going to play me more? I also knew that you had been cheating on me since your 20s, but I kept quiet because of the children. That's why you can't get rid of the habit of cheating. You're walking arm in arm with a friend? I've never seen such a friend. It's over. Your life ends here. You can do whatever you want from now on. Wow, I didn't expect that. So that's why she wasn't at home. It's impossible not to have time to make dinner for your children. It's funny that such a person was pretending to be a good mother-in-law and complaining. It's not a joke. I've sold our house and all that's left is to submit the divorce papers. I've been fooled for a long time. Now I can live my own life, properly. You sold the house? What are you doing without my permission? I won't get divorced. No matter what you say, it's too late. I don't think I'll ever see you again. If you have any complaints, please contact my lawyer. Huh? What will happen to me from now on? I don't have a house. I don't have any money. How am I supposed to live? Why are you taking away my happiness at this age? You're the one who kept taking away Lisa's happiness. Before, you took it from me too. It's just that it's come back to you. Please rethink. I admit I was wrong, but please don't divorce me. Don't make me laugh at this point. It's decided. You have to leave the house tomorrow. I've warned you. The divorce is decided, so I'll go home now. Me too. My father-in-law had been pretending not to know about my mother-in-law's cheating habits since long ago. Thinking about my father-in-law's feelings made my heart ache. I can't imagine how much he loves his children. And finding out that he had been planning this divorce all along, I felt a bit relieved. I wanted my gentle father-in-law to lead a free life. I had always thought that when I saw my in-laws. Age has no bearing on life's choices, because my father-in-law should have a life of his own, and I was filled with gratitude towards my sister-in-law who helped me. I never thought she would consider so much for me. It made me realize once again how wonderful a family can be. I wanted to have a good relationship with my father-in-law in the future, so I wished to live with him. And I wanted him to interact with my daughter, his grandchild, who he hasn't seen much until now. It's a family restart from this age, but I want to make it the best life. When my father-in-law called me Lisa, I truly felt like we were family.
Leave the money and get out quickly. Charlotte's harsh words saddened me. We may not get along, but we're family after all. How could she say something so heartless? As I felt lost, Thomas grinned and said, "Well, that went as planned. Mission accomplished." At that moment, I had no idea the chaos that was about to unfold. My name is Violet. I met my husband Thomas at work. I work in the office of a shipping company while Thomas is a truck driver. My first impression was that he's a robust guy, both physically and in personality. He's good at his job and kind to his colleagues. However, he wasn't so adept at the romantic game. Whether it was making a move or proposing, he was like a pitcher who only threw fastballs. No change-ups. but I prefer a straightforward man over a guy who thinks he's a playboy. As our relationship progressed and tensions eased, I found him quite interesting. Above all, he gave me a sense of security that I could rely on him. We got married and were blessed with 2 children. Our son and daughter have moved out and live on their own. Now, Thomas, Dad, and I live in a large house. Mom passed away 5 years ago due to illness. Thomas and I still work together at the same shipping company. Thomas has been promoted to a supervisor and now handles the dispatching. We had a happy marriage, but one worry was my brother Jason. Dad is soft on Jason. Jason has been dreaming of becoming a rock singer since he was a teenager. He's still chasing his dream, pompadour and all, no matter his age. I won't discourage anyone from following their dreams. However, when he runs out of money, he comes to borrow from Dad, and Dad, being soft, lends him the money. Dad, lending money is fine, but has he ever paid you back? Violet, when you lend money, you should do it with the intention of giving. That means you shouldn't expect it back. Remember that. But Jason thinks he'll somehow make it. He's underestimating life's challenges. Isn't that risky? When I was young, I dreamed of becoming a novelist. But Victoria's parents said if I was going to marry her, I needed a stable job. So I gave up my dream and chose to marry. I don't regret getting married, but I do regret giving up my dream. That was the first time I'd ever heard about my dad's younger days. So that's why I want to support Jason's dreams. But it doesn't seem like Jason's putting in much effort. Do you really think he can achieve his dreams while goofing off all day? Mountain climbing isn't just about conquering the peak. Every step you take along the way is part of the story. Well, you sound like a poet. Makes sense since you wanted to be a novelist. Come on, you're making me blush with such direct praise. I'm not praising you. Initially, I was worried that Jason had some dirt on Dad and was blackmailing him, but it turns out Dad also chases dreams, so he probably understands Jason's desire to escape reality. One day, Jason brought a woman home. Let me introduce you. This is Charlotte. From her name, I expected a dainty woman. She was, well, big. Hi, I'm Charlotte. I'm Violet, the sister. Nice to meet you. Charlotte is 5 years younger than me, but much larger in build. Our first impression of her wasn't great. She was curt to both me and Dad, leaving us with the impression that she had poor manners. Eventually, Jason and Charlotte got married, so she became my younger sister-in-law. Neither Jason nor Charlotte held full-time jobs. They were always quitting their part-time jobs in a huff. Charlotte practices jiu-jitsu and has a short temper, often bragging about putting her arrogant bosses or seniors in joint locks. I just hope she never gets arrested for it. Jason brags about stories that aren't brag-worthy, like headbutting a disrespectful boss. 2 kinds of stories I really can't stand: bragging about bad behavior in the past, bragging about fights. I think many women also find these kinds of bragging a turnoff. One day, Jason came home to borrow money from Dad again, and I finally spoke up. Jason, you're working, right? Why don't you have any money? I got into an argument with a plant manager just because I forgot to put away a cart. I told him it was workplace harassment. He yelled again, so I gave him a flying knee kick to the chin. Charlotte seemed pleased, asking, Total KO? I decided that if Dad wouldn't say it, I would. Every workplace has people you won't get along with. But even people I initially disliked turned out to be decent later on. I've often been glad I didn't pick a fight. You and I lead different lives. My pride is taller than the One World Trade Center, so yelling at me is practically asking for a flying knee. I couldn't believe my ears when Charlotte cut in. You're siding with a boss who harasses people? That's not what I'm saying. Oh, so you're lecturing me. You better be ready for this. Ready? Want to take this outside? Or here's fine too. I was flabbergasted. What is she, a teenager? Feeling threatened, I walked away. I couldn't believe she was actually picking a fight. Jason didn't intervene. Would he have stopped if it were his wife fighting his sister? Getting hurt would be the last straw. I knew I had to watch out for that couple. When I turned 50, Dad got sick and was hospitalized. It wasn't long before we had to say goodbye. People said he lived a long life at 80, but I didn't feel that way. The era of living to 100. I still wanted to talk about many things with Dad. When Thomas and I were alone, he said, Violet, actually, Lawrence. What? Never mind. What do you mean, never mind? Just tell me. Later. Before much time had passed since the funeral, Charlotte approached me. Did Lawrence leave a will? A will? Probably not. He was hospitalized so suddenly. And if there's no will, then the inheritance. You're already talking about inheritance? I guess you're not even sad. How dare you? Want me to put you in the hospital? Try me. When I raised my voice, Charlotte grabbed my arm in anger. I was taken aback but didn't want to apologize. Should we call the police? What are you doing? You made me sound like a monster for bringing up the inheritance, so I thought I'd teach you a life lesson with an arm lock. You're the one who's wrong, Violet. Enough. Don't yell. What are we going to do about the inheritance? I was momentarily speechless, but then I glared at Jason. Jason, aren't you sad that Dad passed away? That's irrelevant. Stop calling me stupid. I don't want to be called stupid by someone as stupid as you. What did you just say? The atmosphere was tense until Thomas arrived. What's going on here? Wife, you better tell your husband to raise the kids right. Those words crossed the line. I'll pass that message right along to Jason. Good on you. I'm fed up with you, Violet. This makes my decision easier. Decision? Jason dropped a bombshell. I'm the eldest son. That means the house and Dad's inheritance are all mine. Are you out of your mind? I'm perfectly sane, Jason said, stone-faced. Just as we were stunned by his audacity, Thomas spoke up. Violet, let's try to keep a cool head. We're not making any progress. Fine. We sat down at the table to hash it out. The inheritance is all mine and Charlotte's. Violet, I want you to give up your claim. That's ridiculous. Our dad isn't rich. If we split it between two households, there won't be much left. There's only two of Dad's children, me and Jason, so it should be divided between us. But Jason scowled. Look, Violet, you and Thomas both have jobs and are doing fine. I'm the one pursuing my dreams, so I'm the one who needs the money. Why don't you get a job, Jason? Let me finish. Living in the house means no rent, and with the inheritance, I can take on the world. Dad was cheering for me, you know. The best way to honor him is to pack Carnegie Hall. You can't even pack the local park. What if I do fill Carnegie Hall? Will you put your money where your mouth is? What are you talking about? I seriously considered calling the police. Thomas, what do you say? Can you give in? I cannot. Then Thomas calmly asked Jason, So, you're asking Violet to relinquish her claim? Yes. And you're okay with that, Jason? What are you talking about? Of course it's not okay. At that point, Charlotte glared at me. Shut up. You've been yapping like a puppy this whole time. Such words should not be tolerated. When I glared at her, Charlotte glared back with an angry face. Is it cute to yap like a puppy only until you're in your 20s? Stop pretending to be a young girl. It's embarrassing for a 50-year-old hag. Take that back. I won't tolerate insults. Thomas, wasn't it? You should have set her straight. What a useless couple you are. At this point, I couldn't keep quiet. If you weren't as big as a hippo, I'd have slapped you a long time ago. For a moment, Charlotte looked dumbfounded, but then turned to Jason. Did your sister just call me a hippo? Violet, apologize while you still can. I'll apologize when Charlotte does. Enough, both of you. Violet, calm down. Fine. Let's proceed with the disinheritance, Violet. I looked at Thomas with wide eyes, but something in his gaze told me he had a plan. Why else would he agree to such an unreasonable demand? I had no choice but to trust Thomas. So, Jason, just to confirm, you're fine with Violet being disinherited. I've been saying that. Stop making me repeat myself. It's annoying. What an infuriating couple. A wife who acts younger than she is, and a husband who thinks he's smart but is actually dumb. Leave the money and move out already. Charlotte's harsh words saddened me. Aren't we still family, despite our differences? How could she say such merciless things? Why should we be the ones to leave? I couldn't agree to this. We'll find a new place soon, but we have belongings. Please give us a bit more time. If you take too long, I'll throw everything outside. Try it, and I'll call the police. Think I'll be scared if you mention the police? I'm not afraid. Call the Marines if you want to arrest me. Unable to contain my anger, I stepped outside. I wonder if Dad is also at fault. Thomas smiled at my confusion. It worked. Our plan was a success. What? These moments make me thankful for our savings. With savings, you don't need to borrow money. Even with zero debt, there are still substantial monthly expenses: rent, utilities, food, taxes. Taking on more debt would naturally make things tougher. I've always made it a point to avoid loans, pay in full for what I buy, and save a bit each month. Years of this kind of effort mean we won't be in a bind when emergencies happen. Maybe Jason set a bad example. He lives impulsively, and when he's out of money, he turns to Dad. It was one thing when Dad was working, but he had no problem borrowing even after Dad retired. I always tell my kids how important it is to save so they don't end up like that. Thomas and I settled into our new condo. Once we'd finished unpacking, Thomas said, "Let's consult a lawyer first." A lawyer? To initiate the renunciation of inheritance. Are we really giving it up? That's when Thomas finally told me what he had almost mentioned before. While playing chess with Lawrence, he quietly mentioned that he lost all his savings and is in debt. What? Because of Jason? Yes. That made them even more unforgivable. Maybe that couple also shortened Dad's life. You're not entirely right, but you're close. Huh? Thomas told me something even more shocking. Charlotte had yelled loudly from behind Dad and pushed him with both hands. It wasn't just a one-time prank. It had happened multiple times. Dad started fearing it was an attempt to induce a heart attack and couldn't say anything when Jason came to borrow money. I never thought they'd go that far. In other words, Lawrence had much more debts than assets. You get what I'm saying? Yes, now I get it. Inheritors receive not just assets, but also debt. If the debt exceeds the assets, you can renounce the inheritance. Let's ask the lawyer. That's the best course. We consulted a lawyer and successfully renounced the inheritance. Just as I thought they might show up, Jason and his wife barged into our new condo. Violet, you set us up, didn't you? Set you up? What are you talking about? Don't play dumb. There's no inheritance from Dad, just debt. You knew, didn't you? I had no idea. This won't end with just an arm lock. Be ready for a chokehold. I calmly took out my mobile phone. Hello, is this the police? What are you doing? Charlotte grabbed my phone and shut it off. Violet, how are you going to take responsibility for this? Then Thomas stepped in. Jason, I recall asking you multiple times if it's okay to relinquish the inheritance, right? So you knew it was drowning in debt, didn't you? I had no idea. Whenever Jason needed money, Lawrence would lend it without a second thought. He gave out big amounts like it was nothing. I assumed Lawrence must be well off. Jason was at a loss for words when Charlotte interjected. Nice try, but you're not weaseling your way out of this. We inherited those debts. You two need to do something about it. What responsibility are you talking about? My spouse and I are not responsible for any of this. Hey, are you going to do something about this or not? Threats won't work on me. Or should we lay it all out for a third play? I'll share every detail of what happened. Jason, are you okay with that? How would I know that Dad went into debt just to give Jason money? If I knew, I would have stopped it. Do you even realize you shortened Dad's life? Unable to respond, Jason stayed silent, but Charlotte was defiant. If you're going to say that, are you okay with both of you ending up in the hospital? Enough of this nonsense. If you lay a hand on me or coerce me, it's jail time. Your threats don't work on me. You're 45 and talking like some high school delinquent. Charlotte smirked, glanced back, and looked at Thomas again. Wait, were those lines aimed at me? Right after saying it, you coerce me? Coercion is a serious crime, you know. You won't get probation. Idiot! Are you a judge now? It's complex to decide whether probation applies in any crime. Don't talk nonsense when you know nothing. Seeing Charlotte's tirade, Thomas turned to Jason. Jason, are you okay with this? Charlotte, just shut up for a second. Excuse me. Who are you telling to shut up? Feeling something dangerous in Charlotte's menacing glare, I said, If you want to fight, do it outside. I won't allow it in my house. Let's go back for now. As Jason stepped out into the hallway, Charlotte followed. I quickly closed the door and locked it. I could hear their arguing voices, but I was more concerned about causing a disturbance in the neighborhood. Did you just tell me to shut up? What are you going to do if I call the police? Don't worry, I'll call an ambulance in a minute. A few seconds later, I heard Jason's screams from down the hall, but I pretended not to know him. Immediately after that, I heard what sounded like a dying scream, but it had nothing to do with me. Jason and Charlotte had insulted us, so obviously they'd severed ties with our family. So whether they divorce or Charlotte gets arrested for assault, it has nothing to do with me. A few days later, I got a call from Jason. Violet, I was wrong. Will you help me? Who is this? Don't be like that. We're siblings, right? I couldn't help but feel it was too late. Turns out Jason was in the hospital. Apparently, Charlotte had broken his arm. This was like something straight out of a comic book. Ever heard the term, you reap what you sow? I'm genuinely sorry. Could you cut me some slack? I can't afford the hospital bills. That's unfortunate. No matter how coldly I brushed him off, Jason kept begging. Please, for the love of God, help me. I'm not God. Is Thomas there? Don't call him by his first name. We're no longer family. My words seemed to hit hard, and Jason was speechless. Switching the call, Thomas took over. After a brief chat, he hung up. Let's go to the hospital. Don't give him a cent. I know. Thomas and I went to the hospital, but not to visit. It's better to say it face to face. Jason pleaded in a polite tone. Please help me. Debt collectors have come to the first floor of the hospital. Their nurse told me. I'm scared to death. But Thomas looked stern. After the insults you and your spouse hurled, it's only natural for us to cut ties. That's not what I meant. Well, if we're not cutting ties, then why disinherit? Disinheritance means cutting family ties. Jason looked down and spoke softly. I apologize for what I've done, but I need your help. I have no one else to turn to. What about Charlotte? We're divorced. A family falling apart, then. She's at the police station for assault. It felt unreal. You repeatedly called my wife an idiot. If I had called Charlotte that, you'd never forgive me. Jason looked troubled. People who spew hate often don't remember what they've said, but those on the receiving end don't forget. I have a good memory. I remember every word you two have said. I have heard it from Charlotte as well. The wife should be properly disciplined by the husband. What does that even mean? Explain it to me. Thomas presses on logically. What did Charlotte mean when she said a wife should lay down her body? Is that even something you should say to a woman? Those are not words you say to a woman. Jason seems to have forgotten not just his own comments, but also those made by Charlotte. Yelling like a little puppy, that's a clear insult. As for my dear wife, you called her a young wannabe or a 50-year-old hag. Don't repeat it. Sorry. Thomas doesn't let up. You said it to me as well. When I asked repeatedly if I should disclaim my inheritance, you told me to stop making you repeat yourself because it's annoying. It's too late for any excuses now. Jason lowers his head on the bed, looking like he's about to cry. I'm really sorry. Can you please find it in your heart to forgive me? No way. Charlotte called my wife an old hag, and you insulted me by saying I'm not mentally sharp. By the way, what does not mentally sharp mean? Explain it to me. Thomas glares at the trembling Jason. Explain it. What? Jason shakes and his eyes go wide with a terrified look. If I weren't in a hospital, I'd be yelling right now. Let's just cut ties off completely. You're the one who said to leave the money and move out quickly. Thomas looks down at the dejected Jason, then turns to me. Shall we go? Yes. After all was said, I thought Thomas might end up offering financial help out of a sense of divine mercy, but he stood his ground. As we left the hospital, a smile crossed my face. I saw your scary side today. There's nothing like that. Be kind to me, okay? Of course. The storm has passed. From now on, I hope for peaceful days, basking in the warmth of spring sunlight.
My name is Harriet Simmons, a 32-year-old housewife with a part-time job. My husband Charles is 2 years older than me, and we have an almost 5-year-old daughter, Catherine. We are a family of 3. Charles works as a department head in the production management division of a clothing manufacturing company. After graduating college, I took a job as a customer service representative at a bank in the suburbs. Charles and I met through a mutual friend. Compared to my outgoing personality, Charles was a bit reserved. He was the kind of guy who made you want to protect him. We dated for a year before he proposed and we got married. Catherine was born the following year. My mother came from a place well known for its matriarchal society. I guess I inherited that trait from her, as I tend to take the lead in our household. Now that Catherine has started kindergarten, I work part-time at a local grocery store about 3 times a week. My parents handed over their house to me after they retired early and relocated to a second-hand villa near a ski resort. The house we as a family currently live in is the one they bestowed. My father, who began making pizza as a hobby, even opened up with a small pizza shop. It's located along the main road and is doing fairly well. My mother is renowned for her crepes made with the flour used for pizza. Their establishment has an unusual reputation as a cafe where you can enjoy homemade pizza, or a pizza place where you can have delicious crepes. While my parents enjoy a tranquil retirement, my in-laws, who live about 30 minutes away by car, are quite a handful. My mother-in-law comes from a noble family and my father-in-law was adopted into the family through marriage. Naturally, my mother-in-law is a dominant figure, adoring Charles, my husband, and their heir. My husband is unmistakably a mama's boy, frequently visiting his childhood home. My mother-in-law has been persistently urging us to give her a grandson. When Catherine and I visit, she barely acknowledges her granddaughter, constantly pushing me to quickly give birth to a boy. Even when I take my daughter for a visit, she has to reintroduce herself. "Grandma, my name is Catherine. Haven't you remembered it yet?" "Oh, is that so? Well, either way, it's fine." "That is why I hate you, Grandma." "She really has no charm at all. Who does she take after?" she would say, frowning in my direction. Because she's a child, she's just being honest. I never voiced it out loud, but I see it softly in my heart. Due to this, Catherine never warms up to her grandmother. Incidentally, as my father-in-law is practically a non-entity, Catherine seems to have no interest in him either. Our relationship with my in-laws was gradually becoming distant because it was always like this. On the other hand, Catherine is adored by my parents and she clings to them too, proclaiming, "I love Grandpa's pizza and Grandma's crepes." My mother-in-law still calls my husband my baby boy. And they're always talking together. My husband repeatedly says, "Mommy, mommy." Truly a mama's boy. It gives me the chills. When my mother-in-law sees my face, she says, "Harriet, our family is prestigious. We need a male heir. A daughter won't do. Please give birth to a son quickly." It's not easy to just give birth to a son, so I brush her off with all due respect, but then she would say, "The grandchild of our neighbor is a boy. They must be so happy to have a good daughter-in-law," and sighs, implying as if I am at fault. I don't care if they're a noble family or a prestigious family, they are just so outdated. As my father-in-law was adopted into the family, he just nods in agreement without opposing my mother-in-law. I endured this lifestyle because I love Catherine. However, my husband would start saying, "If only Catherine was a boy," whenever the opportunity arose. When I asked, "Isn't a girl good enough?" he would reply, "That's because my mommy says." And then my mother-in-law, who heard our exchange from my husband, would always call, "Why are you bullying my baby boy? Can't you cherish your husband even though you are his wife?" I would retaliate against such remarks. "Oh, do you cherish my father-in-law? I haven't heard his voice for a while now." "What did you say? You she-devil, if you bully my baby again, I won't let it go." Hoofy. If I'm a devil, then you're a demon. You should stop being so attached to your child. I was now at war with my mother-in-law. Then one day, my husband approached me with a discussion.
My parents want to go on a trip, so I want to help them out a bit.
He requested to arrange about $1,000. Where do you think we have that kind of money? You do know how much your salary is, don't you?
Well,
You understand, right? Even we want to go on a trip. I vented my usual frustrations on him.
but both my parents are old now. Their legs will get weak soon and they won't be able to travel. They say they want to go to places they want to while they can.
He's trying to appeal to my emotions by saying it's filial piety. I understand how you feel, but can't they manage with their own money?
After arranging various travel items, it seems they didn't have enough for the actual travel expenses.
It's their lack of planning that got them into this mess, just like you.
But Harriet, don't you feel bad for them?
Not at all. I'm not going to strain myself just to please them. Enough is enough.
But
There will be no buts or knees. I shut him down with a dad joke. Standing with my arms crossed, I towered over my husband who shrank in front of me. My daughter, Catherine, who had been watching the whole time, clapped her cute little hands, saying, "Mama, you're so cool." In the end, Charles, unable to arrange the money himself, shifted the responsibility to me and phoned my mother-in-law. "That useless wife of yours can't even do a little filial piety. She's not a real family member. Do something about it. She works part-time, doesn't she? She should have some savings. We don't have much time before the trip, so hurry up." Finally, unable to stand up to my scary mother-in-law, Charles quietly withdrew $1,000 from Catherine's account. When I found out, I was livid and stormed over to my in-laws' house. "Mother-in-law, I need to talk to you about the trip." "Oh, what's the matter all of a sudden? Don't play dumb. What do you mean by demanding travel money?" "Well, your husband willingly gave it as a part of filial piety, didn't he? What's wrong with that?" Right from the start, it was a total combat mode. "He took it from our daughter's saving. You know, this isn't acceptable, right?" "I couldn't care less. She's going to be married off anyway. Spending money on her is a waste." "What are you talking about? She is my precious child. Saving and spending money on our child is our responsibility." With a long-suffering expression, my mother-in-law retorted, "I can't believe we have such a woman as our daughter-in-law. She can't even bear an heir and is utterly useless at home. I didn't marry into your family. If you want an heir so badly, why don't you give birth to one?" With that, I stormed out of my in-laws' house. Anyway, I decided to make Charles repay that $1,000 from his pocket money. After their trip, my mother-in-law returned and summoned Charles and Catherine to their house. Though I was curious, my main concern was preparing for Catherine's 5th birthday. Planning a birthday party for a child this age is tricky. Who to invite? Obviously, I have to invite the children who invited Catherine to their parties. But there's a limit to how many people we can accommodate. Plus, what about food? And I still have to think about a present for Catherine. And our family party at night. My brain was at its limit. Oh, my brain needs sugar. I need to replenish the glucose. So I ate 3 of my favorite puddings and managed to devise a plan. Just as I was feeling a bit relieved, Charles and Catherine returned from my in-laws. But to my surprise, my usually lively daughter suddenly retreated to her room. When I asked Charles what happened, he responded,
"Nothing, really."
No, something's wrong. Our greetings at home were always high-spirited to match my enthusiastic daughter Catherine. It was our unspoken promise. This had never happened before. When I went to check on Catherine, she was sobbing. "What happened? Grandma told me that I am unwanted and shouldn't come home, so I had to stay outside all the time." What? I couldn't believe what had happened. "I was given a bottle of water, so I had to stay outside, even though it was really hot." "And where was your dad?" "Dad was inside eating watermelon with Grandma." What? I stormed out of the room and confronted Charles. "What's going on? Why did you leave Catherine outside in this heat? Aren't you ashamed as a father, as a human?" To be comfortable while your child is suffering? My anger erupted, but unusually, Charles was defiant.
She was just noisy, so I made her stay outside. I made sure she stayed hydrated, so what's the problem?
This is unacceptable. It's normal for kids to be a bit noisy. As I raised my voice even more, Charles tried to change the topic.
Among our relatives' children, Catherine is the only noisy one. Maybe girls really aren't good. My mommy also said this. She wants a boy soon.
What are you even talking about? It doesn't matter if we get a boy or a girl. Babies are a gift from above. Today, Charles seemed unusually authoritative. Influenced by his mother, perhaps?
If you're going to act like this, I might consider divorce.
You would go that far? My body started shaking with anger. I never knew he could be this kind of man.
My mommy said divorce that devil of a wife soon and find a younger one. I'm starting to think she might be right.
I see. I have thoughts of my own. But remember, Catherine's birthday is coming up. I want you to celebrate it properly.
All right, let's both cool our heads and talk later.
I realized unexpectedly how Charles and my in-laws truly think. I couldn't master the energy to cook dinner that day, so Catherine and I ate at a nearby diner. Charles said he was going back to his parents' place and drove off again. Later, he contacted me saying that he would be staying at his parents' place for a while and would return for Catherine's birthday. I lied to Catherine, saying, "Daddy went home because Grandma is sick." Catherine responded, as if she was trying to understand in her own way. I revealed everything that had happened to my parents.
Put the happiness of your child first. If she's happy, then you will be happy, right? We are on your side, Harriet and Catherine. If you want, you can come here. No, we would be delighted to see our granddaughter every day.
My father responded with a smile. My parents' house has plenty of space for us to move back in. Catherine's school is a bit far, but it should be fine. More than anything, the nature there is superb. Even if we end up separating, the word divorce floated in my head. Then came Catherine's birthday. I had informed Charles about the party and its starting time. We had planned to have a birthday party with Catherine's friends during the day and a family party at night. However, Charles did not return even when the scheduled time arrived. "Daddy is late, isn't he? What happened?" Catherine asked. "Well, Daddy's busy, so he might be a bit late." I replied, even though I thought he was much too late. About an hour past the scheduled time, I found it peculiar and called Charles. "What's going on? Aren't you coming home yet?"
Oh, it's you. What's up at this hour?
He responded, "What do you mean, what's up? Today is Catherine's birthday. You said you would come. Catherine is waiting for you without touching her food."
Oh, right. I forgot about that.
His response seemed a little tipsy and frivolous.
Right now, I'm in Australia with Mom. We're staying at a resort hotel and enjoying a luxurious vacation per her wish. We plan to be here for 3 weeks. By the way, the wine in Australia is surprisingly good.
Wait, what? Australia? What are you thinking for getting Catherine's birthday?
Oh, who cares about that? I don't care.
As if to cover for Charles's outrageous comment, I heard my mother-in-law's voice. "Who's that? The demon wife? Just ignore her. We don't need the useless woman who can't give birth to a boy anymore." Charles took that as a cue and said,
I think the same. I'm considering a divorce and decided to have an extravagant family vacation. We're having a good time, so stop calling.
Then he hung up. What just happened? With a bad feeling, I checked our joint bank account. What is this? The balance was zero. Almost 300,000 of savings had been withdrawn. He used this money to go to Australia with his parents? Shocked, I collapsed on the floor. Tears wouldn't stop flowing. Catherine, worried, came over and asked, "Mommy, what's wrong? Why are you crying? Isn't Daddy coming?" I'm sorry, sweetheart. Daddy won't be coming today. He isn't, but it's okay because Mommy is here. Catherine loves Mommy the most, she said, hugging me. No, she was comforting me. I hugged Catherine as I cried. Catherine, Mommy will always protect you. At that moment, something inside me broke. The next day, I took action. I went to the government office and gathered necessary documents. I decided to settle everything and move back to my parents' house. I swore to myself that I would shatter everything. I received a text from Charles accompanied by a photo of him and his mother in Australia saying, "The luxurious trip is fun. No souvenirs as a punishment. I'll call you when we get to the station, so come pick us up." His message seemed very assertive. Maybe he felt stronger with his mother. Who would bother picking them up? I moved my belongings to my parents' house and began to organize Charles's things. When I explained the situation to my friend at work, she sided with me. Amazingly, her husband works for a moving company and they agreed to transport the luggage. They said they would charge the cost to my in-laws and they could also keep their belongings, so I decided to leave it to them. Then my daughter and I went to my parents' house where we were kindly welcomed. Seeing my parents' face, I started to cry again. Eventually, the day of Charles's return approached. Just as I was beginning to settle down at my parents' house, I received a text from him.
"I've arrived at the station. Please come pick us up."
Of course, I ignored it. There were multiple calls and texts, but I let them all go unanswered. Eventually, he must have arrived at his parents' house. I received a call from the landline. Thinking it was about time, I answered the phone.
"Why aren't you answering my calls despite the numerous attempts? Explain yourselves."
I'm done. I have lost all desire to continue being your wife. Let's get a divorce as you wished.
Wait, are you serious? Divorce? You mean divorce?
Seems like that's what you and your precious mommy want.
What? Anyway, let's come down and talk this over when I get home.
After the call ended with that exchange, the phone rang again immediately.
"Hey, a truck from the moving company is at my parents' house and they're unloading tons of luggage. What's this all about?"
Oh, that's your stuff? I thought you'd be returning soon, so I had it delivered. Please make sure to pay for the delivery charge and storage fees. Packing was a lot of work, but I'll consider that a service.
Stop joking around. Calm down. I'm heading over there now.
And then he hung up. My daughter and I ate my mother's homemade crepes and excitedly awaited the moment. Looking at the wall clock, just as I thought it was about time, the phone rang. Hello?
Hey, I just got home and there's nothing here.
Oh, doesn't it look nice and clean?
No? What is this? I don't understand. Where are you? Is Catherine with you?
Charles, who had returned to our house, was stunned to see it completely empty. Yes, Catherine is with me. Say hi to Daddy, sweetheart. Hello? Catherine is having grandma's crepes.
Are you at your mother's house?
Yes, that's right. We had pizza for lunch. It was yummy. After taking the phone back from Catherine, I said, "A lawyer will contact you about the divorce soon, so be prepared."
No, before that, what happened here? The house is gone and the place has turned into an empty lot.
It seemed Charles was surprised about something else. I sold it. The land fetched a decent price, but the house wasn't worth much. So I turned it into an empty lot. Yes, I wanted to settle everything cleanly, so I handled everything while they were on vacation.
What did you do with the money from selling the land? I had the right to receive some of it.
The land was inherited by me before we got married, so you don't have any rights to it. It's my personal asset.
So what will happen to Catherine?
Moving on to the question of custody. You have the nerve to ask that even after leaving your child alone like that? If I leave Catherine with you, her life will be at risk. I will have custody, you will need to pay child support, and also I will be requesting a fair distribution of assets. I can't believe you squandered our savings. I will claim that amount back. Let's discuss this with our lawyers.
What's going to happen to me?
He asked. Who do you think you're asking that question? I couldn't care less. Just like your beloved mother told you, go find a young woman to bear your heir.
We're not even divorced yet.
Tell that to my lawyer. Not wanting to deal with him anymore. I want you to know, I have no intention of reconciling with you. Now I'm going to start preparing dinner, so goodbye. I said and hung up. Mom, you're so cool. Catherine clapped her hands. Then we started the divorce negotiations and I left everything to my lawyer. As expected, he brought his mother along. She insisted that everything was my fault and that her darling Charles was innocent. I discussed it thoroughly with my lawyer and I decided not to demand alimony, but I asked for a share of the assets, including the misappropriated amount and child support for Catherine. Charles was complaining, but when I threatened to take it to family court, if we couldn't reach an argument, he reluctantly accepted. My ex-parents-in-law sold their house to pay off the settlement and child support, which I received in a lump sum. Once things had settled, Catherine started attending a new kindergarten and made new friends. She's growing up to be a strong and lively child nurtured by the rich nature around us. Thanks to my previous experience as a bank employee, I found work at a local agricultural cooperative. I have become good friends with local farmers and sometimes they give me vegetables. And then one day, some old friend from where we used to live visited and told me about Charles. Apparently, he is doing as his mother told him and is actively seeking a young woman to marry. He was persistently hitting on a young woman at his workplace, but his creepiness and insistence caused all the women there to despise him, and he ended up quitting his job. Now he's working as a part-time job at a construction company that's all men. It seems he's developed a fear of women. My ex-mother-in-law is still pushing her son to remarry for the sake of family continuity. But there can't be many women who would marry a part-timer with a fear of women. Their noble family is sure to die out. I bet she's still blaming everything on me, but I don't care. Meanwhile, I have started dating a man I met at work who's also divorced and has a child in the same kindergarten class as Catherine. We are both single parents and our relationship is progressing with a view to the future. I bought a used car. Australia is out of the question, but Catherine and I occasionally drive to the nearby mountains and rivers. Since coming here, I have seen her smile a lot more. I realize that my life is dedicated to protecting her smile. Thankfully, my parents are still healthy and working. Along with my new partner, we dream of selling homemade pizza, crepes, and ready-to-eat dishes made with fresh, pesticide-free vegetables produced by local farmers at a nearby roadside station. Today, Catherine and I drove our old car to the river. The sky we looked up to was blue. As I watched Catherine stack pebbles from the stream, I took a deep, calming breath.